people put their lives on the screen. They put really intimate details of their lives out there, and with very little thought that there might be people using that information in ways that are not benign.
Of social media. I think that people are only beginning to understand what it might mean to post things about yourself in a public forum that then might be looked at by people that you work with, or might be looked at by people that might employ you in the future. Or, that whole area, I think, is where people are now only beginning to have a think about what that might mean for them.
It's like ragging on the internet repeatedly, except it happens in front of hundreds or thousands of mutual friends. And because it happens on the internet, those offensive messages never go away. They're scars that remain on the cyberbullying victim. Sadly, this hidden scourge of cyberbullying is something that no one likes to talk about. They don't even like to admit that it exists. And yet millions and millions of people around the world suffer from it every single day. They go through low self-esteem issues, depression, are more likely to drop out of school, are more likely to get into alcoholism, are more likely to go into drugs, and in rare cases, even commit suicide. It's awful, and it needs to stop. In the fall of 2013, I came home one day from school to read a story about a young girl who was only 11 years old. She had jumped off of her town's water tower to her death, all because she had been repeatedly cyberbullied by her classmates. I was shocked, and I was angry. How could a girl younger than myself be pushed to take her own life? It was unacceptable. And that's where my journey started, to come up with a long-term, effective solution to stop cyberbullying at the source before the damage was done.
The web's democratic in one way and distinctly undemocratic in another way, and I think a lot of the confusion about the political ramifications have to do with that one word having so many meanings. So it's democratic in that it quite literally delivers power to the people. It essentially opens up participation in the public sphere, right? So I've been teaching at ITP, at the Interactive Telecommunications Program, for about 10 years. And the average age of my students has stayed pretty much the same. My average age has risen at the alarming rate of about 1 year per year. And so I'm in the position of teaching my own youth as ancient history, right? I have to get my students to understand what the media landscape used to be like. And I tell them all kinds of stories about what it was like. And they nod politely, and I think they believe me when I tell them these things, but I could tell they don't feel it. And the thing they really don't feel is when I say to them, in the 20th century, if you had something to say in public, you couldn't, period, right? If you were a civilian, if you were a citizen but not a media professional, you could not broadcast a message, no matter how hard you tried. In fact, people who went out of their way to try to get messages out in public through amateur channels, right, holding up signs on the street or, by the roadside, were widely regarded as being kind of off their rockers. And that change is enormous, that anyone who wants to participate, has at least the means to participate, is a huge change. So in that sense of the word democratic, the web has been this huge increase in the participatory logic of the media environment. If by democracy, though, you don't just mean engagement and participation and availability to be part of the public sphere, but you mean the contending of political ideas in such a way that an outcome is reached and it balances the rights of the minority with the rights of the majority, the web is not democratic at all. Because the kind of democratic structures you need, things like everybody gets to vote, but each person only gets one vote, we can't even tell who anybody is. So we have no way of saying we can be sure we're being fair in counting votes, right? We don't have official forums in which things are debated, and after some contentious period of bringing the ideas to bear, a decision is reached, and that decision is legitimated by the will of the people. And so what you get in the web is all of the contending of special interest that you expect in a democracy, but you don't get many of the mechanisms for defending the overall process or outcome from the special.
Yeah, it's interesting. Would you stick a picture outside your house? No, probably not. But you are always framed in social media context in a world that you create. You don't have to accept people as your friends. You don't have to let the whole world see it. It's not really anonymous in the way that I think sometimes people get scared that it is. I think this all comes back to education, and it's all very well for me to sit here in my mid to late, can I bear it 30s. Actually, you need to look at what 11, 10, 9, 8-year-olds are doing and how they're interacting with technology. And for me, they're the people that both can teach us, but also need to be educated themselves. And this is where I agree with Tanya Byron's report about technology, that, it's all good and to be embraced, but you have to underpin it with proper education about exactly those issues of identity and privacy.
I think one of the things that has happened to the first generation of kids to grow up always being online, which by the way are my kids, they have never experienced dial-up or anything like that. They've always had always on. And what I've seen is they have a global awareness that was not present in my generation. They really feel as if this is one world. They also feel as if they are always connected to everyone else. There is a feeling of being connected that I did not have in my generation. And I think the third thing is that there is a sense of movement forward, the sense of going somewhere, of maybe you might call it progress, that I think was not present in previous generations.
The moment you go online, you are recorded as having gone online. You leave a print. People know roughly where you're coming from, and they know you've entered a site. And once you've entered that site, it can say where you're going in that site, where you don't go in that site, what you look at, what you don't look at, what search terms that you use, what documents you decide to display, and how long you're there, and where you go next. And by putting all those things together, we can begin to develop characteristics of information-seeking behavior and use in cyberspace. It's very, very simple, and it's done automatically, which is the beauty. And anybody could do it, essentially, but don't.
I did an interview with a 16-year-old that is precious to me because he talked about how he knows that people, can read his email. He knows that people, somehow he senses that his texts are being saved in some server in the sky. But he, when he wants to have a private conversation, he goes to payphones, and he feels that payphones are the only safe place for him to talk. I mean, you have this sense of even young people looking for the interstices of the system to find a little privacy. I don't think this is good. I think that, my grandmother, who came from a European background, taught me how to be a citizen at mailboxes in New York City, where she brought me down to the mailboxes. She said, unlike in Europe, where, bad governments would read your mail and open your mail, in America, it's a federal offense. She's saying it's a federal offense to read somebody else's mail.
What if the reason adolescents were posting these offensive messages was because they couldn't make good decisions on social media? More importantly, what if I gave them a chance to do that? What if I created a product called Rethink that would detect when an adolescent tried to post an offensive message on social media and alert them and go, whoa, hold on. You're about to post an offensive message on social media. Are you really sure you want to do that? Would that deter adolescents willing to post that offensive message? I had no idea, but I was ready to find out. I conducted a very elaborate study in which I gathered 1,500 valid data trials. And what did I find? Over 93% of the time, when an adolescent receives a Rethink alert, they actually decide not to post an offensive message on social media. 93% of the time. The overall willingness to post an offensive message dropped from 71 to 4%. It was incredible. My research had proved that rethink before you type, rethink before you post, rethink before the damage is done was the most effective long-term solution to stop cyberbullying at the source before the damage was done. I'm now working